I'm Craig and Architects. I just introduce myself. Before the end of the pandemic, Melbourne Central was actually the, I suppose, most or best performing retail centre in Australia per capita, which is quite interesting. And the way they did that, GPT with a client, they had a little formula for trying to get lots of young architects in there to really sort of shake it up and throw little eclectic, surprising, weird, clashy mixes together. And we were lucky enough to be invited to do Ella South, which is one of the latest additions. And there's another place next called Ella North. Right, this is not working. Oh, I get it. Okay. So this is a kind of a transformation from this to this. Bit of a story, and I suppose you've probably been through this space before. The context is Elizabeth Street here, Lonsdale Street here. This is Ella North by another architect, and this is what we were tasked to work with. And then there's another architect here who was doing the Menzies Alley, and then obviously entry to the Melbourne Central Station, and the big tower here as well, just by Cox. So you remember this is kind of a really kind of been from the 80s. It's never really kind of worked. It's been cold and it's chasm-like, and it's 3 stories of beige sort of precast, and it makes you really feel like little ants scuttling through. It has no sense of scale. So our solution was to look to make Ella into a memorable space that drew users back time and time again. And the way we wanted to do this was to make what we call a loose space that inspired the user's senses to really make them feel and experience going through that space. And rather than to sort of attack the space frame and things like that, which we couldn't afford, we looked at what we call sensory correction to try and alter the perception of the space. So we did and actually engage the sense of the user. So we did 2 key moves. The first was to add all these suspended aluminium fins in here, Y-shaped fins, which would block the views of the space frame in certain aspects, and also then bounce zenithal light in there and give a kind of a sense of what's happening outside. The bone-coloured fins were sort of syncopated in rhythm and in section, and also in tone, to create a force perspective, to conjure a force perspective for the user as they went through the space. So to try and activate the sense of your body as you went through. They also had integrated festoon lights or pin lights at the edge to create sort of a festoon light lowered atmosphere at the evening. These are sort of the original sketches we used to win the project, so it's a change from this, but the essence of it was the same. It was really, the second move was to introduce this mirroring up to the upper walls to reflect the fins on forever, so that it transcended the chasm-like sense of the space and made it almost become like a rolling sea of clouds of these fins going over. And then to introduce granularity to the space, so we put all these sort of boxes and framed areas, and then also on the tower side, which has tenancies, so seating on this side, tenancies on this side, and also upstairs we created these boxes to create this sense that you're almost like in a village or a market or in quite a small space. So this is how it turned out. It's hard to see on this, but that's the entry to the Melbourne Central Station. We were also tasked to look at the lift lobby next to Jason Ramen, which goes to the toilets and connects to Ella North now. And the basic premise was to sort of look at how we could work the mix of the tenancies, and then to try and create the openings or apertures to the tenancies to actually have activations. We wanted people to sit on those thresholds, not to open it up and create these black holes, and really wanted to get traction on both sides. We pushed into the existing risers on this side, where we found a few holes we could push in past the electrical stuff, and actually tried to make little eddying spaces where people could sit. And this is how it worked in sections, so this Y-shaped, sort of almost wishbone kind of shape, which is derived from an RHS, which we were using. And then we sort of created the boxes down low, and then nested inside of those to create a sense of slippage, some little canopies, and then we just bespoke heaters and lights, and then planters trailing down just to give a bit of softness to the space. In the elevation, you can see on the tenancy side, which is the tower side, you can see the boxes, and then the boxes sitting on top of them, which obviously reflect through as little objects sitting on top, mirrors right through, and then just this syncopation of the fins. And the other side, same thing, kind of like planters going down, boxes, and then also these little framed up stands just to create little vignettes within space or episodes. So this is sort of how it looked. Took a while to photograph it because there's all this work next door and a lot of artwork was continually coming in. So the idea was really to have a lot of colour and energy, which GPT love, to have a lot of opportunities for artwork. So we just left a lot of areas and just said, this needs to be an eye catcher, a digital screen, this needs to have artwork, this needs to have tattoos, almost like mosaic tattoos in the floor. We were looking at trying to activate the edge, really sort of get activation, so try to create a design guide for the tenants to work with where people activated and they didn't just create big holes. And the artworks are obviously laid in all the way through, and so they're kind of bombed all the way through, which is really nice. And the fin sort of had a graduation of 3 powder coat colours to really sort of help force that forced perspective and create that sense of rolling horizontality going over. And we also looked at, because we didn't have the money to rip up all the paving, we looked at creating these kind of rugs of granite, and they're really sort of in there to just create these sort of dissonances or points of intimacy within the space. And then also the tattoos would sort of obviously work through that to create another layer on top of that. We had these hoods here, which then were nested with these canopies, which are like fabric, kind of like fabric awnings with Dolanov, but they had to be non-flammable. And then they've been bombed with artwork, which is great. And then just brick slips to create tactility at the point of engagement. Obviously the fins. Yeah, cool, keep going. Obviously the zenithal light coming through. This is one where they didn't do a bench, unfortunately, but upstairs we had Worksmith, or co-working space for hospitality. Stephen Baker mosaics were put in through, which was really nice. Just above, you can see how we worked in with the existing matrix of bluestone, which was quite fun. To create that slippage. And then we had a breakout space in the middle for buskers, just people to engage. You can kind of see how all the artworks are all coming in here, which was really enjoyable to see. This is the old lift lobby throughout with a Jason ramen. It's a really cold face, so we looked at punctuating that with little pop-outs, creating granularity, putting down these sort of granite rugs, and really trying to create a sense of tactility and warmth to make this almost like a street edge. There's an artwork on this side. This is the south alley. You can see we're pushed in. Same idea, just all these sort of nested canopies going through where we couldn't punch in, we just kept them flat like little vignettes. So the space flowed beyond through there. And then really just trying to tier it and undulate it and just create points for people to sit and occupy the edge and to really sort of create this implied spaces within. Then from the entry from Lonsdale Street, we sort of said, look, you probably just need to do funky artwork there just to really kind of loosen it, because this is Cox's stuff next door and then Kurakawa's work, and we just said we need something loose within the interstitial zone. So they just sort of got NS to do this artwork, which is nice. And then we come to here. So we've been really happy with how it's come out in terms of the layering and the mix, and then getting all the art and trying to layer it and just create a space that feels like a place to be rather than a thoroughfare. Thank you.